It started with a bark. Not just any bark, but the kind that cuts through routine like glass breaking across tile. It was loud, sharp, primal. 1 second, room 2B at Hillridge Middle School was a blur of acrylic paints and chatter. The next, everything froze. The German Shepherd, Rex, was moving. "Whoa, what's he doing?" One of the 8th graders whispered, their brush still hovering over a half-finished canvas of a beach. Officer Travis Morgan had just taken a sip of lukewarm coffee at the back of the room when he saw his partner shift. Rex had been stationed near the supply cabinet, head down, eyes half closed. A living statue. Until now. The bark came again, deeper this time, and then came the growl, low and vibrating like thunder under the skin. "Rex," Travis said, rising to his feet, voice firm but measured. "Heel." Rex didn't heel. The dog lunged, full speed, toward the east wall, where a massive painting hung just above the floorboards. The entire class gasped. One girl screamed. Paint water sloshed over pallets, brushes dropped to the tile. Rex bared his teeth and launched upward, clamping his powerful jaws on the bottom edge of the artwork. The canvas tore clean across the middle with a rip that sounded louder than it should have, like paper being shredded in church. "Stop him!" shouted Ms. Parker, the art teacher, her face pale, brush still in hand. "What is he doing?" Travis rushed forward, grabbing Rex by the harness and pulling him back. The dog resisted, legs spread, claws scraping the floor, a low snarl vibrating in his throat. His eyes were locked on the painting, or rather what was now behind it, because behind the tattered canvas was something no one expected to see. A small metal handle, rusty and old, embedded not in drywall, but in cold industrial steel. "What the hell?" Travis muttered, letting Rex fall back into a sit. The shepherd's body stayed tense, like a coiled spring, ears erect and nose twitching furiously. The room stood in stunned silence. Ms. Parker was the first to speak again, her voice thin and shaky. "That painting, it's been in my family for years. My father gave it to me when I got my first teaching job." Travis turned toward her slowly. "Did you know there was a panel behind it?" She shook her head, stepping back. "I swear I had no idea." He believed her. She looked terrified. But dogs didn't lie, and Rex had never barked without reason. Not once, not even in the worst of times. "Eli," Travis called to a student near the door, "go get Principal Jenkins, now." The boy bolted. "What's going on?" Another student asked. "Did the dog find a bomb? Is it a gas leak?" Someone else said, "Why did he freak out like that?" I think I'm going to throw up," said the girl who had screamed earlier, clutching her stomach. "All right, class," Ms. Parker said, trying to recover her composure. "We're all going to step into the hallway, quietly." The students filed out, eyes wide, whispering as they passed Travis and Rex. One boy gave the dog a wide berth, muttering, "That dog's not normal, man. He sees things." When the room was empty, Travis crouched beside the panel. It looked like part of the original foundation. Old steel, welded edges, faintly scorched in one corner. The handle had no label, no lock. Rex sat at his side now, still watching the panel, still ready. Travis pulled out his phone, tapped into the school's emergency contact tree, and called in the district security coordinator. "You're going to want to see this with your own eyes," he said, "and send someone from facilities. There's something behind the art wall." "Is it dangerous?" the voice on the other end asked. "I don't know yet," Travis replied, "but my partner says yes." The hallway was already buzzing when Principal Jenkins arrived with the janitor and 2 assistant teachers in tow. A lockdown was issued moments later. Official reason: potential maintenance hazard. but whispers among students and staff grew louder by the minute. In the now empty classroom, Ms. Parker stood staring at the shredded canvas on the floor. The painting had depicted a weathered American flag rippling in black and grey tones, set against a desolate field with faceless soldier silhouettes. An eerie piece. Most students hated it. "You said your father gave it to you?" Travis asked. She nodded. "Yeah, he was in the service. Never talked much about it. Said painting helped him remember things without having to relive them." Travis exchanged a glance with Rex. The dog's eyes hadn't left the panel. 15 minutes later, the district facilities rep arrived with a portable scanner. They ran it over the wall. A faint signature came back. An internal cavity. Roughly 6 feet wide, 3 feet deep. "Someone built this into the foundation," the rep said, wiping sweat from his brow. "This isn't on any blueprint I've seen." "Open it," Travis said. They pried the panel loose. It gave way with a creaking groan, releasing a gust of stale, metallic-smelling air into the classroom. The space behind it was a room, a small chamber lined with rusted shelves and old, dust-caked cabinets. There were no weapons, no gas lines, no explosives. But something about the way the air smelled, old paper, mold, antiseptic, set Travis's nerves on edge. It smelled like a hospital that had been sealed up and forgotten. Rex stepped closer, standing perfectly still at the threshold of the hidden room. Not growling now, not barking, just watching. Ms. Parker stepped forward, then halted. "I swear I didn't know this was here," she whispered. "I've been in this room for almost 10 years. "No one's blaming you," Travis said gently. "But I think we just found something that was never meant to be uncovered." Then, from behind them, one of the teachers murmured, "Wait, are those file cabinets?" "Yes," Travis said, walking in carefully. "And I have a feeling they're not full of report cards." He reached for the nearest drawer and tugged. It opened with a groan. Inside were folders, thick ones, labeled with handwritten codes, Echo Protocols, TS Project, Subject 9. All of them stamped in faded red. Confidential, Department of Defense. Rex moved beside him, ears twitching, nose lifting toward the ceiling. He let out one sharp, guttural bark. Travis looked up slowly. "This isn't over," he said. And somehow, everyone in the room knew he was right. It wasn't until Travis closed the classroom door behind the last staff member that the room felt silent again. Truly silent. Not the kind that comes from stillness, but the kind that settles in the gut, tight and uneasy. Rex sat beside the torn canvas, breathing steady but alert, his gaze fixed on the dark space behind the wall, like he was waiting for something else to move. Something that hadn't yet revealed itself. Travis stood there a moment, hand still on the knob, eyes scanning the room, now changed forever. A few brushes lay on the floor, tipped paint cups bled color onto tiles, and at the center, the shredded painting lay crumpled like a collapsed flag. He crouched beside Rex. "What did you find, buddy?" Rex didn't answer. He never did. But his ears twitched slightly at the sound of Travis's voice. His tail gave one small, controlled thump against the floor. A signal. Not celebration. Not anxiety. Recognition. That was the thing about Rex. He didn't bark just because. He didn't growl for effect. Every movement was calibrated, every reaction drawn from something deeper, something primal and trained, yes, but also, in some ways, knowing. Travis ran a hand over the dog's thick coat. Rex had been with him since Afghanistan, through bomb zones, search missions, midnight stakeouts. When he retired 2 years ago, the department had offered him up for adoption. Travis didn't hesitate. It had never felt like a choice. It had always been Rex. When the school board proposed a pilot K-9 in schools program last spring, Travis had been reluctant. Rex was aging. His workdays were over, or so he thought. But Rex had taken to the halls of Hillridge Middle like he owned them. Kids adored him. Staff doted on him. Even Principal Jenkins, usually cold toward dogs, had warmed up. Rex had earned the trust of this community, and now he had broken that trust wide open. Down the hallway the buzz was returning, parents called in, teachers whispering behind closed doors, lockdown updates filtering through the intercom. Travis knew it wouldn't stay contained for long. He heard footsteps approaching, clipped and nervous. Evelyn Parker. She stepped into the classroom without knocking, her arms crossed over her chest like she was holding herself together. She looked different now, stripped of her calm art teacher warmth. Pale, barely holding back something between fear and grief. "I still don't understand," she said softly, eyeing the open wall. "That painting's been up there since I started. My dad gave it to me. I always thought it was, I don't know, just symbolic." Travis rose. "You said he was in the military?" "Yeah, Air Force. He was stationed in Europe during the 70s. Never really talked about what he did. I assumed intel work. He had that way of saying just enough." "Did he say where the painting came from?" "Number only that it was his last assignment, and that it was meaningful." She swallowed hard, then stepped forward, careful not to look directly at the shredded canvas. "He gave it to me when I graduated from art school. Said it was a reminder that some truths can't be said aloud, only painted." Travis looked toward Rex. The dog's eyes hadn't moved. "You think he knew?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I think he knew exactly what he was doing," Travis said. "I think he gave you a key disguised as a gift." "That doesn't make sense. My whole childhood—" She paused. "I remember living in Munich with my mother, painting with my grandfather. I remember all of that." "Memories can be planted," Travis said, "especially when people want you to forget." Parker's knees buckled slightly, and she reached for a nearby stool. Rex moved instinctively, shifting closer as if to offer balance. She noticed. "He's watching me." "He's reading you," Travis corrected. "He picks up on things before people do." There was a long silence between them, filled only by the soft hum of overhead lights and the distant murmur of the front office. Then she said something that shifted the room again. "I used to have nightmares when I was a kid. Always the same. Cold rooms, fluorescent lights, a dog barking from behind a door I couldn't open. I'd wake up shaking, crying. My mom would say it was just dreams, that I was sensitive." Travis felt the chill rise in his spine. "Have you ever seen this room before?" he asked, nodding toward the dark opening. She shook her head, slowly. "Not consciously." The silence stretched again. This time, it was Rex who broke it. A low whine, barely audible, more vibration than sound. He stood up, walked to the edge of the opening, and sat, head high, back straight, like a sentinel. "He knows something else is down there," Travis said. "You think there's more?" "I don't think Rex tore that canvas just to show us a hidden door. I think that was step one." Parker pressed her hands to her eyes. "If I'm Subject 9, like that folder said, then what did they do to me?" "We don't know yet," Travis replied, "but we're going to find out." At that moment, his phone buzzed. "Travis," said the voice on the line. "District's bringing in a federal team. DOD's involved now. They're sending a forensic unit. We're being asked to preserve the site until they get here." "Understood," Travis said. "Also, one more thing. You might want to take a look at the East Annex. Custodian says there's another painting. Looks like it's from the same artist, might be related." Travis hung up. "Ms. Parker," he said, turning back to her. Did your father ever paint more than one piece? She looked confused. He had a series. I only kept the one. I thought the others were lost in a move years ago. Well, it looks like one of them made it to the east wing of this school. Rex had already started moving towards the door. The school had fallen into an eerie rhythm by the time they reached the annex. Kids were locked in classrooms. Security patrolled the halls. Teachers looked over their shoulders. Everyone could feel it. The building was holding its breath. The east wing was dim, its windows dustier, its lights flickering. At the far end, a narrow hallway displayed leftover student art from previous years. But near the fire exit hung a painting that didn't belong. It was taller than the others. Darker, greys and greens, a field of static and wire. A girl, blurred at the edges, stood beneath an archway. Behind her, something canine-shaped, just shadowed enough to question whether it was really a dog. Parker's face went pale. "That's his," she whispered. "That's my dad's work." "How long has this been here?" "I don't know. I've never seen it." Rex stared at the painting. His ears went back. A low growl started again. Travis stepped closer. "Rex," he said, "show me." The dog moved, not toward the painting this time, but toward the far corner of the hall. He sniffed along the baseboard, then stopped at an old maintenance closet. He barked once. Travis opened the door. Inside were janitorial supplies, yes. But beneath the shelf, half covered by a mop bucket, was a metal case. It was locked, but not well. One twist with a screwdriver popped it open. Inside, more files, more tapes, and one envelope marked, "For Subject 09, in time." Parker reached for it with trembling fingers, but Rex growled again. This time, it wasn't at the case. He was looking past them, toward the other end of the hallway, and standing there, just before the bend, was a girl. Or a shadow, or something between. She looked about 12, barefoot, watching. Then she was gone. And all that was left was Rex, standing tall in the hall, still watching, still guarding. And Travis, heart pounding, realizing this story wasn't history. It was still happening. The federal van pulled into Hillridge Middle before sunrise. No sirens, no decals, just a matte grey panelled truck that looked more like a plumbing service than a mobile forensic unit. Travis watched from the staff lot, coffee cooling in his hand, Rex at his side like stone. They didn't speak, but they didn't need to. Rex had barely slept, pacing the corners of the apartment the night before, checking doors and windows, nose twitching like he was waiting for something to return. He was in full-on alert mode, hyper-aware, but not panicked. Focused. "What do you think's behind all this, huh?" Travis asked softly, brushing his hand across Rex's shoulders. Rex didn't move. One of the federal agents stepped out of the van, a woman, mid-30s, dark jacket with nothing identifying except the clipped badge at her waist. "Officer Morgan." "Yeah. Agent Claire Bennett, Homeland." She extended a hand, glanced down at Rex. "And this is the dog?" Travis nodded. "This is Rex. He's the one who found the panel." "He has a record?" "Served overseas. 2 commendations. Was with me during a collapse in Kandahar. He dragged a corporal out from under rebar. No formal training for that. He just knew." Bennett looked at Rex again. Longer this time. "I believe it. Dogs don't guess. They respond." Travis didn't say it, but he liked her already. Inside room 2B, the hidden chamber had been sealed off with caution tape. But the air in the room had changed again. Thicker, heavier. The investigators moved with quiet urgency, scanning the metal walls with handheld LiDAR, swabbing surfaces for DNA, cataloguing each file and tape. Rex lay at the threshold, head on paws, eyes never leaving the chamber. "He hasn't budged since we got here," one of the techs said. "It's like he's guarding it." "He is," Travis answered. He doesn't let go of something until he knows it's been made safe. A few minutes later, a voice from inside the chamber called out, "Hey, Officer Morgan, you might want to see this." Travis stepped inside, ducking slightly beneath the low steel frame. The agent pointed to the far wall where the linoleum met the concrete. "It's uneven," she said, "and there's some discoloration here. Almost looks like a seam." Travis knelt, pressed a palm to the floor. He felt it instantly, barely a ridge, but it was there, like a hatch. "Hand me that crowbar." With a few grunts and a dull groan of metal, the team popped the hatch open. A narrow shaft, maybe 2 feet across, descended into darkness. A ladder was bolted to one side, rusted but intact. A draft of cold air rose from below, carrying the faint scent of antiseptic and mold, like a hospital no one had walked through in decades. Agent Bennett crouched beside Travis. "Did the school know this was here?" He shook his head. "Not according to the blueprints. This goes deeper than the foundation." Travis clicked on his flashlight. "I'm going down." Rex stood instantly. Travis looked at him. "You're coming too." They descended together, the sound of boots and claws echoing softly as they moved downward. The air grew colder with each rung. When Travis hit the floor, he had to duck again. This chamber was tighter, maybe 10 by 10 feet, walls lined with cabinets and old electrical panels. And on one shelf, coated in dust, sat a stack of reel-to-reel tapes. Dozens of them. One was labeled in faded ink, Subject 09, Initiation Protocol, 1975. Beneath it, Property of Major. Alan Parker. Travis froze. He reached for the tape but didn't touch it just yet. He took in the space. No ventilation, no signs of life. Just silence and shadow. Rex moved to the far end, sniffed once, then sat. Not tense, not afraid, just still. Travis stepped toward him. On the wall behind Rex was a narrow shelf. On it, a small, tarnished locket. He picked it up gently. Inside, an old black and white photo. A little girl, maybe 10, smiling faintly. Standing next to a man in military dress. He recognized the uniform from the portrait in Ms. Parker's classroom. His fingers curled tighter around the locket. When he climbed out of the shaft 20 minutes later, he didn't speak. He handed the tape to Agent Bennett, then walked straight to the nurse's office, where Evelyn Parker sat, eyes red, wrapped in a blanket. He placed the locket on the table. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "That's me," she whispered. "And that's my dad. I lost this when I was a kid. I remember, I thought it fell in the lake behind our apartment in Munich." Travis's voice was low. "You didn't grow up in Munich." She looked at him, panic creeping back into her eyes. "What are you saying?" "I think you were here, in that room, and I think your father was trying to protect you the only way he knew how." She pressed the locket to her chest. "Then why give me the painting?" "Because maybe he couldn't live with what they made him do, and maybe he thought you were the only one who could uncover it." Rex stood at the door, watching. Still. Back in the mobile unit, Agent Bennett played the tape. The room filled with a crackle, then the clipped tone of a man's voice. American, authoritative. "This is Major Alan Parker. Subject 09 has completed primary adjustment. Retention is above threshold. Initiation phase begins today." There was a pause. Then the voice of a child. "I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home. Please, can I see my dad?" A snap. "Proceed with cycle reset." Parker's voice barked. Static. Then nothing. The tape clicked off. Bennett sat back, stunned. Travis stared at the machine. Rex sat beneath the desk, unmoving, but his ears twitched just once. "We need more," Travis said. "This isn't just a hidden chamber. This was a program." Bennett nodded slowly. "And I think we just found its test subject." Outside, the school day resumed. Parents were calling. News was beginning to swirl. But in room 2B, behind the wall, no one had noticed for decades. A truth had been waiting in the dark. It took a dog to find it. Not a metal detector, not a bomb squad. A dog. And whatever came next, Travis knew this was only the beginning. By midday, word had leaked. It started with a local reporter, who happened to be dropping off her niece's forgotten lunch. Then came the Facebook post from a concerned parent, something about a military room found behind school walls. Within an hour, the school district's phone lines were flooded, the front lot buzzing with whispered speculation and cell phone cameras. Travis stood near the side entrance, watching the chaos rise like steam over asphalt. Rex sat beside him, calm despite the building noise, head held high, eyes never blinking. "Any of this feel familiar to you?" Travis muttered, scratching behind the dog's ear. Rex let out a slow exhale, the kind that wasn't quite a sigh, but close, a signal of patience, but also anticipation. Inside the admin wing, Principal Jenkins was doing his best to hold the narrative together. He gathered staff in the media center for an emergency briefing, while Agent Bennett coordinated with federal officials who were preparing a formal statement. But Travis wasn't in the media center. He was back in room 2B, standing in front of what used to be a painting, what used to be just art. The torn canvas still lay folded beside the easel, and the steel panel that had started it all was now cordoned off with a full perimeter of sensors and cables. He wasn't alone. Evelyn Parker stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself, her expression caught somewhere between fear and numbness. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she said, without turning. "You don't have to believe anything yet." Travis replied, "You just have to remember." She turned to look at him, and for the first time, the fight in her eyes had dimmed. "That's the problem, Travis. I can't remember. I see flashes, smells, sounds, but nothing clear. It's like trying to hold on to smoke." That's how trauma hides. It buries itself. "I thought my father was a painter," she said. "I thought art was the only part of him I inherited." Travis hesitated. Maybe it was. But maybe that painting wasn't meant to hide what he did. Maybe it was his way of giving you the choice to uncover it. A long silence passed between them. Then she said, "When I was 7, I had a recurring dream. I was in a room, windowless, blue tiles on the floor. I could hear someone crying through a vent. And every time, just before I woke up, there was barking. It used to terrify me." Travis stepped closer. That dream might not have been a dream. Her mouth trembled, but she nodded. Rex moved to her side without command. He sat, leaned slightly into her leg. His presence, solid and warm, seemed to anchor her. "He's the only one who makes me feel like I'm not going crazy," she whispered. "That's his gift." Travis said, "He grounds people in truth, even when it hurts." She looked at him. "What now?" Before he could answer, Agent Bennett stepped into the room. "We've got something." Back in the mobile unit, Bennett laid out a blueprint on the table. It was an old campus floor plan, decades old, retrieved from a sealed city archive. It was marked as Hill Ridge Administrative Complex, dated 1972. But this version of the map included rooms and corridors no current staff had ever seen. "There's a tunnel system," Bennett said, pointing. "It connects the original basement structure to a facility that used to be a federal utilities hub 2 blocks north, now converted to the Fairridge Power Station." "You think that's part of it?" Travis asked. "I think the school was just the surface layer." Then she slid another folder across the table. "Here's where it gets stranger. This was in one of the sealed drawers." Travis opened it. Inside, photocopied intake forms, behavior charts, progress logs, all labeled with codes like Subject 05, 06, 09. But one name was underlined multiple times. Subject 10, final trial. No birth date, no family info, just one line scrawled by hand at the bottom. Last seen, Southridge Orphanage, 1982. Case closed. Travis looked up sharply. That orphanage burned down. The same year, Bennett nodded. And this part, she added, you'll want to see. She placed a photo on the table. It was grainy, black and white. A girl, no older than 9, standing outside a stone building. Wide eyes, bare feet. A large black and white dog next to her, mid-step, frozen in motion. Travis's breath caught. I saw her, he said. In the east hallway, yesterday, or someone like her. Rex stood from his spot under the desk. Not startled, not agitated, just present. He walked to the photo and stared. Then he did something he hadn't done in months. He let out a single, sharp bark. Not alarm, not warning, confirmation. She's real, Travis said. Or was. Bennett replied. Travis looked at the caption beneath the photo. It was faint, almost smudged. Designation, F10. No further data. Back at the school, Evelyn returned to her classroom briefly to gather her things. She hadn't said it aloud, but Travis knew she wouldn't be coming back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He walked her to her car. Rex followed a step behind, pacing between them like a silent escort. At the driver's side door, she paused. If I really was Subject 09, she said, then what does that make my father? Travis didn't answer immediately. Then he said, a man trying to rewrite what couldn't be undone. She nodded. Do you think I was alone? Travis hesitated. I think there were more, and I think we haven't met the last of them. She opened the door but didn't get in. Instead, she looked down at Rex. Thank you, she said softly. Rex didn't bark, didn't move, but he looked up at her, straight into her eyes, and gave the slowest, most deliberate tail wag Travis had ever seen. Not goodbye. Recognition. That night, back in his apartment, Travis sat on the edge of his couch, files spread across the coffee table, audio from the tapes playing low on his laptop. Rex lay at the window, head up, eyes alert. It was almost midnight when the barking started again. But it wasn't from Rex. It came from outside. Travis stood, crossed to the window, and on the street corner, just beneath the lamplight, stood the girl from the photo. She didn't move. She didn't wave. But beside her, the black and white dog turned its head, staring. Rex stood beside Travis now, silent and watching. Neither of them blinked. Then, just as quickly, they were gone. No footsteps, no shadows, just air. And something buried beneath it that refused to stay buried. Travis didn't sleep. Not after what he saw. Not after the girl who wasn't supposed to exist appeared outside his apartment, like a ghost plucked from a Cold War archive. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, files spread out, replaying tape after tape on his laptop. His fingers trembled with every press of the spacebar. The audio was poor, crackles, static, occasional bursts of voices that sounded clipped and mechanical, but there was no mistaking what they were hearing. Conditioning, suppression, control. These weren't therapy sessions, they were experiments. Rex paced the perimeter of the room twice before settling at the front door, his chin resting on the wood like he was waiting for a knock that never came. At 7:12 a.m., Travis locked eyes with his partner. We need that tape decoded, he said. Now. The only place in town that still had the equipment was Miller's Vinyl and Audio, a dusty one-room shop wedged between a bait store and an empty laundromat. Wes Miller, the owner, had been a Vietnam signal tech and never threw anything away. Not tapes, not wires, not memories. Wes looked up as the bell above the door jingled. Morgan, still chasing echoes? Travis held up the reel. Need this played? Wes raised an eyebrow. Old school. What is it? Something they buried under the middle school. Wes's hand stilled. That where the dog found the panel? Travis nodded. Wes looked down at Rex, who had already taken up a spot by the counter, tail curled around his legs, eyes fixed on the machine like he knew what it was about to say. You're lucky, Wes said. I just re-oiled the heads last month. The machine came to life with a whir, a beat of silence. Then the voice came through, grainy, low, but unmistakable. This is Major Alan Parker. Subject 09 has completed initial cognitive suppression, retention levels holding, emotional response minimized, beginning phase 2. A pause, then the sound of movement, a child's voice, quivering. Please, I want to stop. I want to go home. Another voice, harsher. Cycle reset. Commence stimulus injection. The reel clicked. Static surged. Then silence. Wes turned down the volume. Jesus! Travis clenched his jaw. That was Evelyn. She know? She remembers pieces, nothing clear. But the dreams started. Again. Wes looked over at Rex. He knew, didn't he? Travis nodded. He always does. They left with a fresh digital copy. At 9:43 a.m., Travis stepped back onto school grounds just as a black Suburban rolled into the faculty lot. The driver stepped out and flashed credentials. Department of Education, Forensic Historical Division. But Travis noticed something strange. The man avoided looking at Rex. Who's he? Travis asked Agent Bennett, who was reviewing new findings near the Mobile Command Center. She glanced over. They said he's a compliance observer, supposed to help determine how deep this goes. He's nervous around dogs. She frowned. Then he shouldn't be here. Inside room 2B, the federal team had made more discoveries. Hidden behind the lower lockers were 2 more panels, this time metal boxes, magnetically sealed. They opened the first one with magnetic gloves. Inside, documents stamped Echo Protocol, terminated subjects, files, photos, children, a girl with dark curls, face obscured, a name partially blacked out. Beneath it, handwritten, Subject 10, status, disappeared, final cycle incomplete. Travis stared at the photo. It was her, the girl from the east hallway, the one he saw at his window. Rex gave a low growl, deep, guttural. Not at the photo, at the man from the Department of Education. He'd entered quietly. Now he stood just inside the door, still avoiding eye contact with anyone, especially Rex. Travis stepped between them. You good? The man forced a smile. Just allergies? That's a large dog. Rex's growl didn't stop. Rex, Travis said quietly. Easy. But the shepherd didn't ease. He inched forward, one paw at a time, head low, body stiff. A behavior Travis hadn't seen in months, not since the warehouse raid that ended in a standoff. That time, Rex had been right. Sir, Travis said calmly, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside. The man looked ready to object, until Rex barked once, sharp, commanding, the kind of bark that ended conversations. The man turned without a word and left the room. Agent Bennett appeared in the doorway moments later. That guy give you a bad feeling too. He's hiding something, Travis said, and the dog knows it. Rex sat back down, still watching the door. Later that afternoon, the FBI team finished scanning the second box. Inside were faded drawings, childlike crayon sketches. Dogs, rooms, a door. One sketch showed 2 figures, a girl and a black and white dog, both standing in front of what looked like a hatch, and written in shaky block letters. He remembers. Even when I don't. Travis handed the sketch to Evelyn later that day. They sat in the back of the school library, away from the noise and the questions. She stared at it, silent. "I used to draw dogs," she said, "when I was little, always the same one, but my mom said we never had a dog." Travis nodded, slowly. "Maybe you didn't, but maybe someone else did, someone who looked out for you." Her fingers ran across the page like she was touching something buried deep. "Do you think Subject 10 is alive?" she asked. "I think someone didn't want her to be found. And what if she was like me?" Travis looked at Rex, who now lay curled beneath the table, but whose ears twitched at every word. "I think," Travis said, "that if she's out there, she remembers more than we think." That night, Travis sat by his window again, files on his lap, the tape still playing in his head. Outside, the street was quiet. But across the road, on the edge of the shadows, something moved. A girl, barefoot, and beside her a dog. Not Rex, a black and white border collie. She didn't wave, but she didn't disappear either. She looked up, right at him. And in that moment, Travis didn't need a name or a file number. He knew. She was real, and she remembered. The tunnels ran beneath the school like veins, narrow, forgotten, and disturbingly intact. Travis ducked under a crumbling beam, flashlight cutting a narrow beam through the dark. The air was thick with dust and age, the kind of damp cold that made the skin crawl. Behind him, Agent Bennett followed, clipboard in hand, and just ahead, Rex moved with purpose, nose low, body taut, tail horizontal. They had followed the map found inside the second box. It was hand-drawn, old but unmistakably accurate. It detailed not just the hidden room under room 2B, but 4 additional compartments, each marked by a small, unassuming symbol, a circle split by a line. Echo units. According to the notes, these weren't classrooms. They were designated observation cells. Whatever had happened here wasn't educational. "Rex seems confident," Bennett muttered behind him. "He always knows the way," Travis said without looking back. "He doesn't guess." They reached the first door. It wasn't locked, just rusted shut. A few well-placed kicks and a lever from the crowbar broke it loose. The metal groaned as it opened, revealing a space about the size of a small office. No windows, no ventilation, just old furniture, a bolted desk, and in the corner, a mattress thin enough to be mistaken for packing foam. Rex stepped inside slowly. He didn't bark. He circled once, twice. Then he stopped, Saturday, and stared at the corner wall. Travis shined his light. There, barely visible through decades of grime, was a child's scribble in blue crayon. It showed a dog, a gate, and a girl. He stepped closer. Below the drawing, faint but clear, were 3 words. "Still down here." Travis turned to Bennett. "This place wasn't just storage. They kept them here." She nodded grimly. "There's more." They hit the second room 15 minutes later. Similar layout. Only this one had something different. An old hospital-style bed, wheels rusted, sheets stiff and yellowed. The walls were covered with pinned paper, progress reports dated 1976. Several referred to Subject 10 and a failed memory test. And again a drawing, this time in red. A girl surrounded by a circle. Her eyes were crossed out. "I don't think she escaped," Bennett said softly. "I think she was released. Or abandoned." They moved to the third compartment. More of the same. But in the fourth, something else entirely. Rex stopped short before entering. His hackles rose, teeth bared. He didn't growl, but his body locked. Every inch of him screamed one thing: danger. Travis raised his hand. "Rex?" Nothing. The dog didn't move, didn't blink. Travis stepped forward. The fourth chamber was unlike the others. It had lighting, soft, warm lighting that flickered from old overhead bulbs wired to a generator still humming quietly in the corner. The walls were clean, too clean, and on the far side stood a glass display case. Inside was a military journal. Behind it, a wall of photos, children, all between ages 6 and 10, seated in uniform rows. No names, just numbers. Bennett's breath caught. "This is documentation," she said. "They were preparing to archive it. Someone maintained this." Travis stepped closer. On the desk in front of the display was a folder. He opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Status report. Project Echo final subjects. 12 recovered. 10 confirmed deceased. 1 unaccounted. 1 Travis stared at the last line. Unaccounted. Subject 10. Rex growled, low, barely audible, but it was directed at the floor. He sniffed once, twice, then began circling, slowly. "There's something under here," Travis said. They cleared the room and began tapping the tiles. Within minutes, they found it. A hatch, nearly identical to the one in room 2B. Smaller, but sealed tight. It took an hour to open. Inside, a chamber no bigger than a walk-in closet. Empty, except for a folded blanket, a cracked water cup, and on the wall, etched in jagged writing, "I remember now." They stood in silence. Then Rex did something neither of them expected. He whined, not loud, but heartbreakingly soft. He walked into the chamber and lay down. Right in the middle. His body curled, his nose rested on his paws, as if he'd been there before, or had waited for this moment. Agent Bennett crouched beside him. "What do you think this was?" she asked. Travis stared at the blanket, the wall, the weight of it all pressing in. A holding cell, a place to keep her, until they figured out what to do. Bennett stood slowly. "Then why does it feel like a grave?" Later that night, back in the mobile command center, the tech team digitized the final recordings from the 4th room. One tape, in particular, made Travis stop mid-step. The voice was faint. A girl's. "If anyone finds this, I hope you bring the dog." Another pause, then whispered, "He always found me." That night, Evelyn called. She hadn't slept. The dreams were back. But this time, she remembered more. "There was another girl," she said. "She used to sit with me. Her dog was different, not like Rex, smaller, black and white." Travis froze. "A border collie?" he asked. "Yes. How do you know?" He didn't answer. He looked at Rex. The shepherd was staring at the window again. And across the street, in the dark, 2 shapes, a girl and a dog. Waiting, just like always. The press conference was supposed to bring calm. Instead, it sparked a storm. Principal Jenkins stood at the podium, flanked by school board officials and district spokespeople, all trying to keep their composure as microphones blinked and cameras rolled. Outside, parents crowded the gates of Hillridge Middle, demanding answers. Travis didn't bother listening. He stood off to the side, near the building's east wing, his eyes locked on the old maintenance shed where the second painting, Evelyn's father's other work, had been taken for analysis. Rex stood beside him, body still, ears rotating like radar dishes, tracking something unseen. "You sure you're up for this?" Agent Bennett asked, stepping beside him. "No," Travis said, "but he is." They entered the shed. The painting had been hung on the far wall under controlled lighting. On the surface, it appeared abstract, an arrangement of greys, muted reds, and swirling blacks. But infrared scans revealed a different story. Underneath the top layer was another image, hidden. A map. Bennett held up the printout. "Matches the tunnel layout. And look here, an X marked just outside the school grounds, right where Southridge Orphanage used to be." Travis stared. He was leaving breadcrumbs. Evelyn entered behind them, clutching a small notebook. "I've been drawing again," she said quietly. "Things I don't remember remembering. That place, I think we need to go there. Travis nodded once. Let's go now. They reached the old orphanage lot just after sunset. The area had been paved over years ago, a failed strip mall project that never materialized. Now it was a mix of cracked asphalt and dry weeds. But Rex moved immediately, nose to the ground, zigzagging across the broken concrete. Then he stopped, at a manhole. Travis knelt beside it. Scratched into the rusted lid was something faint but unmistakable. F10 Bennett's voice came low. This was hers. The team began digging. 2 hours later, they hit steel. Beneath the manhole was a sealed chamber, untouched. They pried it open. Inside, a small square room. Empty except for a wall painted by a child's hand, a girl, a dog, a gate. And above it, in black paint, smeared and urgent. I remember now. Travis stepped inside, heart pounding. On a shelf, brittle and sun-bleached, was a torn notebook. Inside, a journal, childish handwriting, pages filled with drawings, numbers, sentences that faded and broke halfway through. But one phrase came again and again. He never left. He's still watching. Rex let out a soft sound. Not a bark, not a whine. A low, reverent breath. Like he knew. Back at the school, Evelyn stood alone in her classroom. She stared at the shredded painting on the floor. For years, it had been just art. Now she saw it for what it was. An apology. A warning. A map. Then, behind her, footsteps. She turned. It was the man from the Department of Education, the one Rex had growled at days earlier. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I just came to see the damage for myself." But Evelyn saw something in his eyes now, recognition. "You knew," she said, "didn't you?" He stepped closer. Then a bark tore through the room. Rex, he was there, barreling through the hallway door. The man turned to run. Rex lunged, not to bite, but to block. His body slammed into the man's legs, sending him to the floor. Travis rushed in, cuffs ready. The man didn't fight. He just looked at Rex, eyes wide with something that wasn't fear, but memory. "You," he said. "You're still alive." Rex stood over him, unblinking. Travis leaned down. "You were part of it, weren't you?" The man didn't answer. But he didn't need to. Rex had already spoken. And that was enough. The national headlines came fast. Cold War secrets uncovered beneath Oregon school. K9 hero exposes decades-old government program. The bark that opened a door to the past. But behind the press briefings and blurred-out photos, the truth remained sharp and personal, for Evelyn, for Travis, and for Rex, who hadn't stopped watching doorways since that final chamber was found. The school closed for a week, not for repairs, but for reckoning. Teachers were placed on emergency leave. The East Wing was sealed off entirely, declared a historical containment zone. Students were sent home with letters that said nothing and hinted at everything. Travis stood in the courtyard on the 7th day, a soft drizzle coating his jacket. Rex sat beside him, gaze fixed on the art wing window where Evelyn's torn painting had once hung. Neither of them had moved in 10 minutes. "You think they'll cover this up again?" Bennett asked quietly. "No," Travis said. "Too many people know now, and too many eyes are on us." Bennett looked down at Rex. "He hasn't barked since the arrest." "He doesn't need to," Travis said. "His job's not about noise, it's about knowing when to stand still." Evelyn returned to the school that afternoon, not to teach, not to speak. She carried a new canvas, wrapped in muslin, and asked to place it in the cafeteria. "For the kids," she said. When the fabric was pulled back, the room fell silent. The painting was nothing like the ones before. It wasn't dark. It didn't hide a secret. It revealed one. 2 dogs, Rex and a black and white border collie, stood at the edge of a forest clearing. Behind them, faint but clear, the outline of a school. Girl's silhouette stood in the doorway, hand resting on the frame. The light behind her was warm, and painted across the bottom corner in delicate script. Some truths remember themselves. Later, as Travis walked her out, Evelyn paused at the steps. "I've been dreaming of her," she said. "The girl, the one we found. But in the dreams, she's not afraid anymore. She's not hiding." Travis nodded. "She knows she's been found. She's always with the dog." Evelyn added, "Not Rex, the other one, Finn. I don't know how I know his name, but I do." Travis said nothing. Because he had seen the same dog, standing beside that same girl, just a few nights ago under the streetlight outside his apartment. And so had Rex. The town didn't riot. It didn't erupt in anger. Instead, something quieter happened. People brought candles to the school fence. They left drawings, letters, small toys. Not just for the girl, but for anyone who had once been silenced. And in the center of it all, someone taped a photo. The now famous image of Rex standing in front of the torn mural, ears forward, the shadow of truth behind him. It wasn't just a tribute. It was a reminder that sometimes history doesn't knock. Sometimes it barks, quietly, relentlessly, until someone finally listens. The town council auditorium had never been this full. Parents packed the rows, shoulder to shoulder. Reporters lined the walls. Teachers stood near the back, many of them still pale from a week of unanswered questions. In the front row sat Evelyn Parker, hands folded tightly in her lap. Next to her, Agent Bennett scrolled silently through a stack of digital files on a tablet. Travis stood in the wings, uniform pressed, tie knotted, posture tight. But it was Rex who drew the eyes when they walked to the stage. He moved beside Travis with the grace of a veteran and the weight of something more, like he knew the entire room was waiting for a sound, a cue, a signal only he could give. The school board chair stepped forward. Her voice cracked slightly as she began. "We've made the decision to permanently close room 2B. The contents discovered beneath and within it will be turned over to the National Archives and reviewed by independent historical agencies. But more than that, we acknowledge that what occurred here, though hidden, was real." A quiet stir swept through the audience. "We were told it was a ventilation mishap," someone called from the crowd. Another voice followed. "So was it true? Did they experiment on kids?" The board chair hesitated. That's when Travis stepped up to the mic. "It's true," he said simply. "They did." Gasps, murmurs, and the silence that followed were thick and unsteady. "I don't have all the answers," Travis continued. "But I've walked those tunnels. I've seen the files. I've listened to voices that were never meant to be heard again. And most of what we've found points to something larger than this town, larger than this school." He paused. But none of it would have been found if not for him. He turned to Rex. The German shepherd stood facing the crowd, ears forward, posture poised, calm in a way that drew the entire room into stillness. "He barked at a painting," Travis said, not because it was strange, but because it hid something wrong, and he didn't stop until we listened, not once. A long beat passed before someone near the back stood up. A teenager, one of Evelyn's former students. "Did the dog really find everything?" Travis looked down at Rex, then back at the room. "Yes," he said. "He didn't just bark, he stayed. He stood watch when no one else could see what was coming. That's more than a dog, that's a partner, that's a protector." Applause started slow, tentative. Then it grew. It wasn't loud, it wasn't wild, but it was real, respectful. Evelyn stood, slowly, her voice quiet but clear. "My father tried to bury something," she said, "and I think he believed I was better off not knowing." But Rex didn't let that silence continue. because silence can be just as damaging as the truth. She looked at the board. That's why I'm asking you not to seal it off. Not completely. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. I want to turn room 2B into something else, she said. A space where kids can paint without fear, where memory isn't something we're afraid of. A place called the room between walls. The board paused. Then slowly, they nodded. Later that evening, after the meeting had ended and the hall had emptied, Travis walked with Rex back to his truck. The night was cool. The streetlights buzzed faintly. Across the street, just for a moment, a shape moved. A girl, barefoot, a border collie at her side. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. Rex didn't bark. He simply sat down, watching, guarding, like he always had. 2 weeks later, the east wing of Hillridge Middle reopened, not as classrooms, but as a gallery. They called it the room between walls. There were no velvet ropes or plaques, no tour guides with laminated badges. Just art, some faded, some new, some painted by students, others recovered from deep beneath the school's floorboards. They were lined along the corridor where silence had once been policy. At the center hung Evelyn's final piece, a forest clearing, a broken gate, 2 dogs, Rex and Finn, standing side by side. In the distance, the silhouette of a girl walking forward, away from the shadows, into soft light. No title, just a brass plate beneath the frame that read, "For the ones who remembered." Travis stood near the back wall, arms folded. He hadn't planned to stay long, but something about the stillness of the space held him there. Rex sat beside him, not moving, not restless, just there, like always. A group of students filed in with their teacher, whispering. One boy pointed to a photograph framed beside Evelyn's painting. It showed Rex standing in room 2B, just in front of the torn mural, as if guarding the truth that had waited years to be seen. "That's the dog," the boy said, "the one who found everything." Travis crouched beside Rex, resting a hand on the shepherd's broad shoulders. "You hear that?" he whispered. "They know now." Outside the gallery, life moved forward. News vans were gone, the barricades removed. But in homes and classrooms across the country, conversations had begun. Parents asking questions, kids wondering what else history had hidden in plain sight. Later that week, a package arrived at Travis's apartment. No return address. Inside was a flash drive, a handwritten note, and a single photograph. The same barefoot girl standing in a field, Finn at her side. Only this time, she was smiling. The note read, "Tell them I'm okay, and thank him. He never stopped watching." Travis looked down at Rex, who had already moved to the window, ears perked, eyes scanning the quiet street below. That night, Travis sat at his desk and opened the Heroes for Animals YouTube submission form. He filled in the title, "German Shepherd Destroys School Art. What's hidden behind it changes everything." In the description, he wrote, "One dog, one bark, one truth that couldn't stay buried. This is the story of Rex K9, veteran, partner, and the dog who remembered when no one else did." He clicked publish. Then he leaned back and looked at Rex. "You ready for what's next, partner?" Rex thumped his tail against the floor, once, firmly, and in that simple motion was every answer Travis needed. Some truths bark, some wait, some guard doorways for decades, and sometimes it takes a dog to bring us back to them. If this story moved you, help us share it. Subscribe to German Shepherd, the channel that honors the loyalty, courage, and instinct of the dogs who change lives, and sometimes history. What's your story with a loyal pet? Tell us. The world needs to hear it.